Israel is on the boil. Thousands of Israelis are protesting the government's planned judicial overhaul. More demonstrations were held today. One such convoy of protesters arrived at Ben Gurion International Airport. Protesters were waving Israeli flags and honking their vehicles outside the airport. This came ahead of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's trip to Germany. Netanyahu is scheduled to meet German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Berlin, but reports say that the visit has been delayed so far. Some Hebrew media reports say that Netanyahu is currently in the Knesset. He is huddled with senior figures in the coalition. Local media reports say that ongoing discussions relate to quote-unquote tensions in the coalition, ahead of a possible softening of the overall proposal. Just earlier, another coalition leader, Smotrich, announced that he was cutting short his trip to the United States to take part in talks on a possible compromise on the judicial overhaul. Netanyahu has been two pressing matters of concerns at home right now. One, there are signs of progress on negotiations over judicial reform. And second, reports cite a security incident in Israel's north. Before reports of delay, the trip was already cut short because of the security incident. On Tuesday, the Israeli parliament voted to approve a bill in the first reading. The bill was part of planned judicial overhaul. It allows lawmakers to scrap Supreme Court rulings with a simple majority vote. Israeli President Isaac Herzog has tried to broker a compromise. Just last week, he called on the coalition to halt the legislation, dubbing it, and I'm quoting, a threat to the foundations of democracy. Meanwhile, the German and British governments have come under pressure for hosting Netanyahu at this point of time. Over 1,000 writers, artists and academics have urged the two countries to scrap the visits of the Israeli Prime Minister. Now, to give us more insight on this, Professor Madzia Baram is joining us from Haifa, Israel. Welcome to the broadcast. He's a Middle East Forum Writing Fellow and teaches at the Department of the History of the Middle East. Now, Baram, let's get straight to the point. We are getting reports that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has shortened his Berlin visit and is currently with some of his high-level ministers. There are talks that there could be a possible softening of the judicial reform plan as well. What do you think the government will be ready to compromise here?
Very little, unfortunately. Maybe I'm mistaken. I hope I'm mistaken. But so far, very little. But there are signs that they are ready for some compromise. But it will be far short of what the opposition and perhaps 250,000 demonstrators have been demanding. I'll just say that there is another reason for the postponement of the travel to Berlin, and this is a security incident involving apparently, possibly, a Hezbollah agent, Lebanese Hezbollah Islamic agent, who managed to penetrate into Israel and who exploded an IED, a roadside detonating charge, against a civilian car in Israel center. And I just hope that my government will not use this as an opportunity to unite the nation in war, which we don't really want. This is a serious event, but it doesn't justify beginning another war. So I would say these are two reasons why he stayed in Israel. My hopes are that that the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, will find a way of beginning a dialogue. The most important thing is to build a dialogue. Without a dialogue, nothing will happen. And I'll just say that I am 84 years old and I'm a historian and political analyst since maybe 40, 45 years. And I have never seen anything like that in Israel before. Never. Such a split. It splits families. It splits the population and it destroys the country's economy. So, and puts at risk the country's security, a serious risk. So I would say, I hope he'll find a way. I think now for the first time since it began, he is looking for a way. He is talking now mainly to 3 of his cabinet ministers who favor a dialogue. But even they are not yet where they should be, namely really opening a dialogue while stopping for the time being the legislation process.
Absolutely. Now, you're right, these protests are nothing short of a movement. Now, Bahram, the judicial overhaul has been termed as undemocratic and giving sweeping powers to the government. These are what the protesters and also the opposition that are saying. I want to ask you, how do you assess the reforms that have been brought in?
The reforms which they are trying to bring in are, for the first time, promising, threatening to change the whole political system of Israel. It's never been done before. Israel became a nation state 1 year after India. And we have a similar system. It's not identical, nothing is identical, but it's a very similar system of a democratic, liberal government, governing system, state. This, I'm not sure, in fact, I'm not at all sure that the Prime Minister and his supporters, the majority, they are only a very tiny majority in the Knesset, in Parliament, but they still have a very slight majority, so they can decide on anything by a 50.5% of the vote. But I'm not sure, I don't even believe that they really intend to build a dictatorship. I don't think so. However, and that's the problem, that's my analysis at least, that the system they are ushering in will make it possible either for them, not now, but or for somebody who will replace them or replace the prime minister, for the next prime minister, to actually establish a dictatorship. That's the problem. It's not that they all wish to establish a dictatorship. I don't think so. But they want so much power for the government, so much power that it actually completely evaporates all the political balances, checks and balances, which every democratic system has. Right. That means that if anybody wants to, he or she or they can establish a dictatorship.
Right. Now, we will be closely tracking the high-level meeting happening as we speak at the Knesset. Thank you for all your insights. Thank you for joining us from Israel, Amatzia Bahram.
You're welcome.